right, happy Friday. And I hope you all are doing well. I do miss you, but I hope you have a few great days off and a lovely weekend, and hopefully you're enjoying the weather. Thank you so much for submitting your analysis so far of Frederick Douglass' narrative of the life of a slave. I hope you're enjoying it, and I'll make sure that you get your feedback right away, and hopefully by maybe Wednesday at the latest. So hopefully you're doing well. For this video series, I want to make sure that the lecture is a little bit shorter. I broke it up into 3 segments, so I'll overview 1, 2, 3, then I'll do 4 and 5, and then 6, 7, 8, which will lead us into a preview of 9, 10, which is your next assignment. So for each of the segments, what I'll do is I'll show you a different place around our house. So this is our back deck, and it has a really nice view. You can see a big, huge view, and I thought that would be really appropriate for chapters 1, 2, and 3, because Frederick Douglass is giving you an overview of slavery, but also addressing some general misconceptions. So kind of those big picture things in terms of slavery. And so 1, we already talked about opening that door, right, to slavery, and 2, we get an overview about how rations work, masters and overseers, but this also deals with the misconception of slaves singing. So Frederick Douglass counters the argument that slaves singing is evidence for their happiness, and he says, no, absolutely not, and here he reveals why. So that would be chapter 2, dealing with general misconceptions, but also kind of the big picture view of slavery. So then we move into chapter 3. And chapter 3 also deals with misconceptions, but again, the general idea of slavery. So it starts out which is interesting. It starts out with that garden, you remember? And if slaves cross into that garden, there's a consequence. So the rules there are very, very concrete, very black and white, very clear, right? Cross the fence, get in trouble. And so there's this general misconception that, of course, punishment is a result of, breaking the rules. But that's not always true. And so Frederick Douglass then talks about how masters often punish their slaves for very arbitrary things, or for no reason at all, or even for telling the truth. There's the example of a master finding a slave on the road, asking about that master, which is him, and the slave responds, he doesn't treat me very nicely, but I am given enough, food and rations, etc. So then, of course, he is punished later. And so this idea of this ever-present threat of punishment and violence that creates an atmosphere of absolute fear for the slave is always living in fear, and of course can never then tell the truth about their position in slavery or their masters. So are really forced to say they're happy. They're not truly happy. And so that's how Douglass deals with that general misconception. Which is chapter 3. And then we're going to move into chapters 4 and 5 next, so I'll show you another place on our property for chapters 4 and 5. Trying to keep it short, and hope you're doing well.